Good morning, September 22nd, 2024. This is Norman Michaelation. This is I.C.A.C Unpacked. Still on vacation, but of course, the stings don't take a vacation. So, very interesting set of circumstances in two particular cases I want to point out, just showing a little bit about the issues involved with predation and how misleading the public is part of the strategy. So I want to start out with somebody who I think did not intend to mislead the public, but did, and a group that deliberately misleads the public. Um, so let's start with Tim Tebow. One of our members has pointed out to us, and I've known this a little bit along the way. Um, it has dedicated his post football life to trying to lead to good outcomes for children and to keep them safe and safe from specifically sexual enticement. And it's a very worthy goal, and I think Tim Tebow has the best of intentions. Unfortunately, he's reporting on a situation where involving the Virginia State Police and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, and National Center for NCE, MEC. In any event, NCMEC gets about over a quarter of a million tips per year from well-meaning people or busybodies, whichever, and it results in very, very few prosecutions. But they like to make sure that the public is out there helping them police, and of course, all they really do sometimes is create a great deal of trouble for a number of people. And again, I don't want to minimize the real problem of predation, but I do think it has been enhanced and made to seem in some quarters bigger than it is, and other quarters remain in the dark. And that's something that I've dedicated this site to saying. Um, Mr. Tebow claimed that 300 people, based on the latest NCMEC number of call-ins and tips, were exploited children. And when you go to he references a December 2023 annual report by the Department of Homeland Security, in which Homeland Security doesn't say what he says. Of course, they do a report on all their agency's activities and they make it available to the public. And there's a small section that deals with child exploitation. And in that section, it doesn't say 300 children. It says they had about 300 tips of child exploitation, of which they ended up with 55 they think may have been exploited. And they made 3 arrests based on that information. Well, that's a far cry from saying there were 300 exploited children. But you have to get into the article to see it. What the reference to Homeland Security is interesting too, because the Virginia State Police, where I.C.A.C really began its operations in Virginia, really does a remarkable job of obscuring things at times, and they don't necessarily they're not exactly forthright with their data and information, as I've demonstrated before. In fact, when I get home from my vacation, I'm going to try to put together something on I.C.A.C's funding a little bit so you can see the funding aspect of it and compare that to their lack of results. Well, if you get into the report that Tebow references in footnote 3 of his organization's press release, you can see that it's a little bit more nuanced than it appears, but you also get to see that the Virginia State Patrol, contrary to what some people think here, and the I.C.A.C people, contrary to what I've been told here by people who are coming after me on this site and challenging me on information, they're in a number of countries. They're in many European countries, Interpol, Europol, countries such as Ecuador, for example, Brazil in South America, and countries in Europe as well, in which they all have operatives who work together. And one of the reasons that we have found, some of our members have found, it's in Bonnie Burkhardt's book, Manufacturing Criminals, Fourth Amendment Decay in the Digital Age, which has just come out with a new updated version showing how police plant evidence. What's interesting about this is that you cannot surveil American citizens through FISA, but nothing is out there that says that you can't be in Brazil, for example, and be an I.C.A.C person and work through those channels and get American citizens on the back end, which is what we suspect that they're doing as well. And for those of you who say, well, I don't care, I just want to protect children. Well, I want to protect children too, and did for many years, despite what some of you folks say on here. You don't know me, you don't know my record. All you know is a one false conviction. That's it. And you see that in a lot of people too. They had no predisposition. But what's interesting about it is that if you give away the Fourth Amendment protections and just let police do it and trust them, when you want to pull it back and rein them in, that's much harder. When you want to say, oh no, I don't want you to go this far. Well, guess what? You've already given away the farm and they're going to do whatever they want. And they've shown over and over again that police will simply push the envelope until the courts or the public stops them. If you don't believe me, investigate it. Look into it yourself. Don't tell me I'm wrong. Look into it. Over and over again, that's the case. But what the public sees are the violent cases like the George Floyd's, uh, the Trayvon Martin, those cases you see, but you don't see what's going on online. So again, the public is deceived, and it comes back to Mr. Tebow, who I'm sure has the best of intentions, but misleading the public, unintentionally perhaps, but still misleading the public. So you get to the second part of the story, which is unrelated except by theme. Out in Los Angeles, you have the I.C.A.C operation out there, which netted some 300 people in a recent sting. What's interesting is that the press release once again says these are all people who are interested in child exploitation. But it revealed something else interesting too. It talked about that there were two phases that they used. And the first phase was the proactive approach. Okay, so they did the proactive stings. And the second approach, then they use a prong or whatever you want to call it, is they showed up at people's houses with search warrants. Now, what they discovered with these proactive approaches is things that the public would like. They found out people who didn't register as re-register as sex offenders. So of course, there are reasons to not to. That are good reasons actually, because it destroys your life. You're not able to get on with your life in a very meaningful way. All right. It's very, very difficult. I'm one of the lucky ones because I had some resources I had put together well before, about a year before. But I am compromised as well because I'm not getting any younger. I'm one of the older folks involved in this. And what they did to me will not allow me to make the living that I need to retire comfortably. Um, and of course, for those of you out there that says you don't care, I get that, but I don't care about your opinion either because you don't know what the rest of us have gone through. You haven't looked at the evidence. You haven't tracked it like many of us have. So you simply don't know. And so there are some people who want to know, and I appreciate that, but there are lots of people who really don't. Or they come, even the people who want to know, they come with preconceived assumptions and belief systems. And you really have to sweep all that away. I had to sweep all mine away. And despite what has happened, I still am not anti cop. I'm not anti uh, um, child investigations. But why do they all have to be all proactive all the time? When you do proactive stings, as we demonstrate over and over again on this channel, Lady Justice Smith, um, her blog, Cage, Citizens Against Government Entrapment, and other groups around, you do not have what you think you have. You have police acting badly over and over again. And then, of course, we have the Washington Post expose where they hide behind the badge and 1,800 uh, specific citations against police officers who have directly molested real children. So back to the Los Angeles case. So in the Los Angeles case, you had the I.C.A.C operation there. And what I.C.A.C did is it rounded up some 300 people in the proactive stings, and it found that some had violated probation. It found that some they charged somebody, a couple of them, with sodomy of a child. But most of them, as a result of proactive stings, were charged with enticement or related crimes. Okay, using a computer solicitation. And that's where it gets very ooky, because if you look at how it's used based solely on what the police claim. Now, like I said, I know this because, it's one thing if you have pictures of somebody doing something, if you have children coming forth and saying that they were touched, or worse, um, inappropriately, because I've seen these as a teacher. But when you have police officers who are dabbling with this online, who are playing games online, who are going after you, who are approaching you, who are bringing up sex for the first time, who are pressing you to send them things, who are showing you how to send things, as in the case in some of this, or who are at the last minute changing the age, in some cases after you've spoken for 6 months with somebody, and then claiming it was a typo, and you believing them costs you your freedom. This is where we have to start drawing a line on these cases, because they're the ones that are being exploitative. They're the ones who are claiming that predation is such a big deal and that is absolutely everywhere. But in reality, it is not that way on these particular sites. And again, if the deep in the dark web is what police officers have told me the real baddies go, they don't spend enough time in those areas, apparently. And why are they spending all the time on proactive stings when they claim it's everywhere and they should do reactive stings? So the advice is always the same. Parents, make sure that you watch what your kids are doing online. Okay. Well, what percentage of children are on adult social media sites? I'm told reliably, perhaps by somebody who I regularly spar with on this channel, who says that everybody knows that children are on these. Okay, well, show me the stats. What percentage of children are on there that justifies you spending time? And when we get into numbers later in one of these episodes, I'm going to show where the numbers lie and how much money we have spent on fishing expeditions instead of going after where we know cases are, the reactive stings. That is, they get a tip. It's a tip from an actual child being harmed. You have actual evidence. You have children in motel rooms and things of that sort. That's where they need to find them. That's where they need to go after the traffickers. Okay? As I was attempting to do when I thought that there was a trafficked person there. That's the tragedy, that they don't do that. Instead, they go after other people. And that's what we would like to curb. Again, not saying that we shouldn't be curbing child predation. We should. Not saying that child exploitation is good. Okay. But we have to have a sense of propriety here. And the police seemingly cannot get their stats up unless they do proactive stings. They pretty much admitted that they do far more proactive stings by about, I'd say 78%. I'm trying to remember the statistics, but the overwhelming majority are actual proactive stings and very few reactive stings. Why? Because they get their numbers up. They tell the public a fairy tale about where the real problem is. And then they say, worse than that, you have no expectation of privacy online. And this, of course, is trickling into everything. All these other debates we're having about the Computer Decency Act and what social media sites owe their subscribers in terms of protecting their identities and protecting them as they're operating lawfully on those sites. And all this is coming out in many, many different areas, but Congress has failed to look at it in a holistic manner. And we need to start doing that so we can really look at that, because it's spilled over into a war on sex as well. It's spilled over into LGBTQ issues again. There's a lot of angles on this that are being affected, and it's not helpful for government agents and those people who are working in concert with government agents like vigilante groups to take the law into their own hands and creating chaos and problems where there need not be any. And again, not suggesting that we don't protect children, but I'm suggesting that we do it in a more orderly and concentrated and fair minded manner so that we don't violate adult rights and go after and target individuals who are actually not a danger to the public. So this is I.C.A.C Unpacked for the 22nd of September, 2024. I'm enjoying my vacation. Looking forward to getting back to you on a regular basis. Have a good day.